You're staring at a child's drawing on the back seat of your taxi. Pencil on notebook paper. A stick figure man dragging something toward a river. Your hands are shaking because you know this scene. You were there. 20 years ago, you watched it happen in the dark, and you ran. You told no one. Now, this 9-year-old girl has drawn your secret in crayon and graphite, and you have no idea how she knows. The dome light flickers. Your phone buzzes. You have one choice. Call the police, confess everything to save the child, or burn the drawing, keep running, and this child stays trapped with a monster. Kelvin Croft pulled his taxi to the curb on East 7 Mile Road just after 9 p.m. The streetlight above him buzzed like a trapped wasp. Detroit in October smelled like wet asphalt and burning leaves. He'd been driving this same route for 15 years. Same cracked sidewalks, same shuttered storefronts, same ghosts. The back door opened. A small girl climbed in. She couldn't have been older than 9. Black puffy coat, pink backpack with a broken zipper. She didn't say a word, just slid across the vinyl seat and stared out the window like she was watching a movie only she could see. "Where to?" Kelvin asked. She said quietly, "Foster home, on Livornois." Her voice was flat, empty. Kelvin had driven enough foster kids to recognize that tone. It was the sound of someone who'd stopped expecting kindness. He pulled into traffic. The radio played low, some talk show about the Lions losing again. The girl didn't move, didn't check her phone, didn't fidget. She just sat there with her hands folded in her lap like she was waiting for something bad to happen. Kelvin glanced in the rearview mirror. "You got a name?" "Kiki." "That's a good name." She didn't respond. The drive took 12 minutes. When Kelvin pulled up to the address, a narrow duplex with peeling yellow paint, Kiki climbed out without a word. No thank you, no goodbye. The door slammed. She walked up the cracked driveway and disappeared inside. Kelvin sat there for a moment, engine idling. Something felt wrong. He couldn't name it. Just a tightness in his chest, a cold weight in his stomach. Then he saw it. On the back seat, a piece of notebook paper, folded once. Kelvin reached back and picked it up. His hands were steady. He unfolded it under the dome light. It was a drawing, pencil on lined paper, a child's drawing. But it wasn't stick figures or rainbows or houses with smiling suns. It was a man, tall, dragging something heavy toward a river. The trees were sketched in frantic strokes, the water was dark scribbles, and in the corner, barely visible, was a shape that looked like a woman's face, eyes closed, mouth open. Kelvin's breath stopped. He knew this scene. He had seen it before. 20 years ago, late at night by the Detroit River near Zug Island. He was 18 years old and stupid and high, and he saw a man dragging a woman's body toward the black water. And Kelvin ran. He never told anyone, not the police, not his mother, not God himself. But somehow, this little girl had drawn his secret. Kelvin sat in his taxi for 20 minutes with the engine off. The drawing lay on the passenger seat like a loaded gun. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. He told himself it was a coincidence. Kids drew dark things all the time. Maybe she saw it in a movie. Maybe it was just her imagination running wild. Foster kids had nightmares. That's what trauma did. But the details were too exact. The angle of the trees, the bend in the river, even the way the man stood, shoulders hunched, one arm extended, dragging weight. Kelvin had spent 20 years trying to forget that night. August 2005, he was 18, fresh out of high school with no plan and bad friends. His cousin Ricardo had dragged him to some party near the industrial docks. Kelvin got high, really high. Everything was blurry except for one moment of terrible clarity. He'd wandered away from the noise, needed air, needed to clear his head. That's when he saw them. A man and a woman by the water, except the woman wasn't standing. She was limp, being pulled. Her heels scraped against the gravel. The man grunted with effort, and then he shoved her into the river like she was garbage. Kelvin froze, his whole body locked up. The man turned. For just a second, their eyes met across 50 yards of darkness. Then Kelvin ran. He sprinted back to the party, found Ricardo, said they had to leave now. They drove home in silence. Kelvin never said what he saw. He was high, he was scared. He was a black kid in Detroit who knew exactly what happened to witnesses who talked. So he buried it. He got clean, got his taxi license, built a quiet life. Told himself that maybe he imagined it. Maybe it was the drugs. Maybe it never happened. But it did happen. And now, this true story, this cold case he'd hidden in his chest for 2 decades, was staring back at him from a child's drawing. Kelvin picked up his phone. His thumb hovered over the emergency call button. He could dial 911 right now, tell them everything, give them the location, describe the man's build, his walk, the sound he made when he pushed her under. But then what? They'd ask why he waited 20 years. They'd ask why he never came forward. Obstruction of justice, accessory after the fact? He could go to prison for his silence. Kelvin put the phone down. He looked at the yellow duplex where Kiki had gone inside. The lights were on. A shadow moved past the window. A tall shadow, shaped like a man. And Kelvin's blood turned to ice. If you were in Kelvin's shoes, would you report what you saw and risk prison time, or stay silent to protect yourself? Tell me why in the comments. I'll be hearting the most thoughtful answers. Kelvin started the engine. He needed to leave. Drive away, forget the drawing, forget the girl, go home and pretend this night never happened. But his foot wouldn't press the gas pedal. He sat there watching the yellow duplex. The porch light flickered. A dog barked 3 houses down. The air smelled like someone's fireplace and old motor oil. The front door opened. A man stepped out onto the porch. Tall, maybe 6'2", broad shoulders. He lit a cigarette. The orange glow lit up his face for just a second. Kelvin's stomach dropped. It was him. Older now, grayer, but the same build. The same way he stood with his weight shifted to one side. The same thick neck. The same hands that had dragged a woman into the Detroit River 20 years ago. The man took a long drag. He was looking right at Kelvin's taxi, not moving, just staring. Kelvin forced himself to look away, act natural. He grabbed his phone and pretended to check messages. His heart hammered against his ribs so hard he thought it might crack bone. When he glanced up again, the man was gone. Kelvin exhaled. His shirt was soaked with sweat. He put the car in drive and pulled away slowly. No sudden moves, nothing suspicious, just another taxi driver finishing another shift. But his mind was screaming. That man was Kiki's foster father, a murderer, living in a house with a little girl who somehow knew what he'd done, who'd drawn the exact scene Kelvin had witnessed 2 decades ago. How did she know? Kelvin drove on autopilot. He didn't remember the route home, didn't remember parking. He climbed the stairs to his apartment, a 1-bedroom walk-up in Hamtramck, and locked the door behind him. The drawing was still in his coat pocket. He spread it out on his kitchen table under the fluorescent light, studied every line, the trees, the river, the man's posture. And then he saw something he'd missed before. In the bottom corner, tiny letters, almost invisible. Help me. Kelvin's hands went cold. This wasn't just a drawing, it was a message. A cry for help from a 9-year-old girl trapped in a house with a killer. He grabbed his laptop, opened Google, typed Detroit River, body found, 2005, woman. The search results loaded. The first headline made his chest tighten. Cold case, Janie Casper, 34, found in Detroit River. Husband still under suspicion after 20 years. There was a photo A woman with dark hair and kind eyes, smiling at the camera like she had no idea what was coming. Kelvin clicked the article, and everything got worse. The article was dated 3 months ago, a 20th anniversary retrospective. Local news loved cold cases that stayed cold. Kelvin read every word. Jamie Casper, age 34, reported missing on August 12, 2005. Her body was found 4 days later in the Detroit River near Zug Island. Cause of death: blunt force trauma and drowning. No witnesses, no arrests. The primary suspect: her husband, Ernest Casper. There was a photo of Ernest, mid-30s, thin face, glasses. He looked like an accountant, like someone who'd never hurt anyone. But the article said police found his fingerprints on Jamie's car, found scratches on his arms, found a history of domestic disputes that neighbors had reported. Ernest maintained his innocence, said he loved his wife, said he was home that night, had no alibi, but swore he didn't do it. The case went cold. Not enough evidence to charge him, not enough proof to clear him either. Ernest Casper spent 20 years as a ghost, the man everyone suspected but nobody could touch. And then Kelvin scrolled down. There was a second photo, a girl maybe 8 years old in the picture. The caption read, "Anna Casper, daughter of the victim, now 28, still seeking answers about her mother's death." Kelvin stared at the screen. This woman had grown up without a mother, grown up with a father everyone thought was a murderer, grew up with questions that had no answers. Because Kelvin had been too afraid to speak. He closed the laptop, pressed his palms against his eyes. The guilt was a physical thing now, heavy, suffocating. But there was another problem. If Ernest Casper didn't kill his wife, and Kelvin knew he didn't because Kelvin saw the real killer, then who was the man living in that yellow duplex? Kelvin pulled up the foster care system website, searched for licensed foster parents in Detroit. The database was public record, names and addresses listed for transparency. He found the yellow duplex on Livernois. Licensed foster parent, Stanley Brunner. Kelvin typed the name into Google. Nothing suspicious, no criminal record, clean background check. The system had vetted him, approved him, trusted him with vulnerable children. But Kelvin knew the truth. Stanley Brunner had killed Jamie Casper, shoved her into the river, let an innocent man take the blame for 20 years. And now he had custody of a little girl who'd somehow discovered his secret. Kelvin's phone sat on the table, still within reach, still waiting. He could call the police right now, tell them everything, give them Stanley's name, give them the location, free Ernest Casper from 2 decades of suspicion. But Kelvin would have to confess, admit he watched a woman die and said nothing. He picked up the phone. His finger hovered over the numbers. And then it rang. The screen showed an unknown number, Detroit area code. Kelvin's throat went dry. He let it ring once, twice, 3 times. He answered. "Hello?" Silence. Just breathing on the other end. Slow, deliberate. Then a man's voice, low and rough, speaking with quiet menace. "You were parked outside my house for a long time tonight." Kelvin's heart stopped. Stanley Brunner. "I don't know what you're talking about," Kelvin said. His voice came out steadier than he expected. "Yellow taxi. You dropped off my foster daughter. Then you sat there, watching, for 20 minutes. Stanley paused. "That's a long time to just sit and watch." Kelvin's mind raced. How did Stanley get his number? The taxi company. It had to be. Stanley must have called and said he left something in the cab, asked for the driver's contact information. "I was checking my phone, finishing my shift." "Right." Stanley's voice was flat, empty, the same tone Kiki had used in the taxi. "Here's the thing. I don't like people watching my house. Makes me nervous, makes me wonder what they're thinking about, what they might know." The threat was clear, unspoken but clear. "I wasn't watching anything," Kelvin said. "Good, because I've worked hard to build this life. I take care of kids nobody else wants. Foster Father of the Year 3 years running. The state loves me, social workers trust me, and I'd hate for someone to spread rumors, make accusations they can't prove." Stanley let that hang in the air. "You understand what I'm saying?" Kelvin understood perfectly. Stanley knew. Somehow he knew Kelvin recognized him. Maybe not the specifics, maybe not the details, but enough to make this call, enough to send a warning. "We're clear," Kelvin said. "Good man." Stanley's voice shifted, almost friendly now. "Have a good night, Kelvin." The line went dead. Kelvin sat in his kitchen with the phone pressed against his ear long after the call ended. His whole body was cold. Stanley had used his name, not driver or sir, his actual name. The message was simple. "I know who you are. I know where to find you. Stay quiet." Kelvin stood up, paced his small apartment. The walls felt like they were closing in. He'd spent 20 years running from this moment, building a small, safe life, staying invisible, and now that life was collapsing. He looked at the child's drawing still spread out on the table. "Help me." 2 words, written by a 9-year-old girl trapped with a murderer who'd already killed once and would absolutely kill again to protect his secret. Kelvin had 2 choices: save himself or save Kiki. If you received a threatening call like this, would you back down to protect yourself or risk everything to save an innocent child? Tell me why in the comments. Kelvin didn't sleep that night. He sat at his kitchen table until the sun came up, the drawing in front of him, his phone beside it. At 6 a.m., he made his decision. He couldn't live with himself if something happened to Kiki. He'd already spent 20 years drowning in guilt over Jamie Casper. He wouldn't add another death to that weight. Kelvin showered, put on his cleanest shirt, and drove to the Detroit Police Department's 5th Precinct on Connor Avenue. The building smelled like burnt coffee and floor cleaner. A desk sergeant looked up when Kelvin walked in. Young guy, bored expression. "Help you?" "I need to talk to someone about a cold case," Kelvin said. "The Jamie Casper murder from 2005. The sergeant's expression changed, less bored now. "Have a seat." 20 minutes later, Kelvin sat across from Detective Kenneth Ragsdale, 50-something, gray hair, tired eyes that had seen too much. He'd been working the Casper case since the beginning, 20 years of chasing ghosts. Kelvin told him everything. The party in August 2005, wandering to the river, seeing Stanley Bruner drag Jamie's body into the water, running away, staying silent. And now, 20 years later, finding out Stanley was a foster father, finding the drawing Kiki left behind. Detective Ragsdale didn't interrupt, just listened, took notes. His pen scratched against paper in the quiet room. When Kelvin finished, the silence stretched long. "You waited 20 years, Ragsdale finally said. "I know. You obstructed a murder investigation, let an innocent man suffer under suspicion for 2 decades. "I know." Ragsdale leaned back in his chair. Ernest Casper lost everything. His wife, his reputation. His daughter barely speaks to him because she grew up thinking he killed her mother. Kelvin's throat burned. "I'm sorry." "Sorry doesn't fix it," Ragsdale said, tapped his pen against the desk. "But it might save a little girl's life." He stood up. "Wait here." Ragsdale left the room. Kelvin sat alone for 40 minutes, staring at the gray walls, wondering if he'd just confessed his way into a prison cell. The door opened. Ragsdale came back with 2 other detectives and a woman in a business suit. "We're getting an emergency custody order for Kiki," Ragsdale said. "She'll be removed from Stanley Bruner's home within the hour, and we're bringing Stanley in for questioning." Whew, Kelvin exhaled. Relief flooded through him. "But understand this," Ragsdale continued. "You're not walking out of here free. The prosecutor will decide what charges you face for withholding evidence. You could be looking at serious time. I understand. Good, because we need you to do one more thing. Ragsdale slid a folder across the table. We need you to wear a wire. The wire was smaller than Kelvin expected. A thin microphone taped to his chest beneath his shirt. Detective Ragsdale adjusted it one last time in the unmarked van parked 2 blocks from Stanley Bruner's house. Just get him talking, Ragsdale said. Ask about that night, about Jamie. We need him to admit something we can use. Kelvin's hands were shaking. What if he knows? He won't. You're just the taxi driver who picked up his foster kid. Nothing suspicious. Ragsdale looked him in the eye. You can do this. Kelvin wasn't sure he believed that, but he got out of the van anyway. The walk to the yellow duplex felt like walking to his own execution, each step heavier than the last. The October air was cold, smelled like dead leaves and rain coming. He knocked on the door. Stanley Bruner answered. He looked different in daylight, older, almost ordinary. He wore a flannel shirt and jeans, held a coffee mug that said, "World's Best Dad." "Can I help you?" Stanley asked. His voice was neutral, but his eyes were sharp. "I'm Kelvin. I drove your daughter home last night." Kelvin forced his voice steady. "She left something in my cab, a drawing. Thought I should return it." He held up the folded paper. Stanley's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes. Recognition, fear, anger. "That's thoughtful," Stanley said slowly. He took the drawing, unfolded it, looked at it for a long moment. "Kids draw the strangest things, don't they?" "They do," Kelvin said. "That one's pretty dark, though. A man dragging someone to a river. Makes you wonder where she saw something like that." Stanley's jaw tightened. "I don't know what you're talking about," Stanley said quietly. "I think you do." Kelvin's voice was barely a whisper. "I was there that night, Stanley. I saw you. I saw what you did to Jamie Casper." For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then Stanley lunged. He grabbed Kelvin by the throat and slammed him against the doorframe. His grip was iron, his face twisted with rage. "You should have stayed quiet," Stanley hissed, "just like you did for 20 years, you coward." Kelvin couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. But the wire had caught every word. Police sirens screamed around the corner. Stanley's eyes went wide. He shoved Kelvin away and ran. He didn't make it 10 feet before Detective Ragsdale tackled him to the ground. Stanley Brunner confessed to everything. Murder, 20 years of hiding. The recording from Kelvin's wire was all the evidence prosecutors needed. Stanley got life without parole. Ernest Casper was finally cleared. After 2 decades of suspicion, the truth set him free. His daughter Anna flew in from California. Father and daughter stood together at Jamie's grave for the first time in years. They forgave each other for the lost time. Kelvin faced the court next. Obstruction of justice, accessory after the fact. He expected prison. Instead, Michigan's governor issued something rare, a hero's pardon. Kelvin's testimony had solved a cold case and saved a child's life. The pardon erased his legal consequences. But the real miracle came after. Anna Casper and her father established the Jamie Casper Memorial Fund. They gave Kelvin $50,000 to start his dream, Safe Ride Detroit, a free transportation service for foster children who needed rides to school, therapy sessions, and court dates. Kiki was his first passenger. She climbed into his new van, looked at him, and smiled for the first time. We often let the fear of consequences stop us from doing what we know is right. That hesitation can haunt us for years, but the peace that comes from finally taking a stand is immeasurable. I hope this story gives you the courage to do something brave today. If Ricardo's journey moved you, please subscribe to join our community and help us spread the light by sharing this video with someone who needs a reminder that kindness is never wasted. I'd love to hear from you. What country are you watching from today? It's incredible to see how far these lessons of the heart can travel. I'll see you in the next story.